Okay, so we left off with the ending of the Revolutionary War, and we're going to move forward. So after the Revolutionary War, the agricultural base of Virginia began to change. So tobacco is very, very hard on the soil, and it strips it of all its nutrients. And without nutrients, you can't grow anything. So farmers had to start taking time off in certain fields so that the nutrients could come back to the soil. So many Virginians would move westward, crossing the Appalachian Mountains and going through the Cumberland Gap, trying to find new farmland to grow tobacco because the current farmland had been stripped of all of its nutrients and they couldn't grow anything. Now, the Cumberland Gap is not in Cumberland, okay? Virginia Statute of Religious Freedom. So during this time, Thomas Jefferson wrote the Virginia Statute of Religious Freedom. It gives all Virginians the right to freedom of religion, separation of church and state. So an example of that would be that the school cannot force a student to pray. There has to always be a separation of church and state, okay? All Virginians have the right to worship as they please. It doesn't matter if you're Buddhist, it doesn't matter if you're Christian or Jewish or Hindu, none of that matters. You have rights underneath the Virginia Statute of Religious Freedom for Virginia to have religious freedom. It became the influence for the First Amendment in the U.S. Constitution. The Virginia Declaration of Rights was written by George Mason, and it gave Virginians rights like freedom of the press, freedom of speech, and included freedom of religion, and many others. This document is the one that influenced the Bill of Rights, which is inside the United States Constitution. So, a good explanation of the differences between the Virginia Statute of Religious Freedom and the Virginia Declaration of Rights. So, picture a cookie jar, okay? You've got two cookie jars. One is the Virginia Statute of Religious Freedom, and one is the Virginia Declaration of Rights. Now, the Virginia Statute of Religious Freedom cookie jar only has sugar cookies inside it. The sugar cookies represent religious freedom, all right? So the only thing included in this cookie jar is sugar cookies or religious freedom. That's the only thing that the Virginia Statute of Religious Freedom covers, okay? It's in its name. Now, second cookie jar is the Virginia Declaration of Rights. Inside this cookie jar, you have sugar cookies, which were religious freedom, but you also have chocolate chip cookies for freedom of speech, oatmeal cookies, which we're going to pretend are the right to bear arms, and snickerdoodles, which we're going to let represent trial by jury. And there's, of course, many, many other rights that are covered under the Virginia Declaration of Rights. So, in that cookie jar, you notice that there are sugar cookies, religious freedom, but there are many other things like freedom of speech and the right to bear arms and right to trial by jury. So, Virginia Declaration of Rights covers many different rights. Included in that is the right to religious freedom, okay? So, Virginia Statute of Religious Freedom, in its name, it says religious freedom. That is the only thing it covers. And the Virginia Declaration of Rights has rights in its name. It covers many, many different rights, okay? So, important people that we've gone over so far have been George Washington, who's known as the father of our country. He was the commander-in-chief of the Continental Army, and he was the first president, which is why he's known as the father of our country. Thomas Jefferson, who wrote the Virginia Statute of Religious Freedom and the even more well-known Declaration of Independence. He was the third president. Now, James Madison is known as the father of the Constitution because he is the man that wrote the Constitution, and he was the fourth president. George Mason wrote the Virginia Declaration of Rights. So, these are just some important documents at a glance that we've gone over. So we started with the Virginia Charter, which was granted by the King to the Virginia Company of London stockholders, and it extended English rights to the colonists and gave them instructions on how to set up Jamestown. Okay, so that was back a couple of units ago, remember? And then we talked about the Declaration of Independence, which declared that the colonies were independent and should have the right to govern themselves. All right, so if you remember, we talked about the fact that Declaration declared independence. So they were just declaring independence. It didn't give them independence. It was just a list of problems they had with England and the king, and saying that they were going to fight to have freedom. The Virginia Declaration of Rights gave rights like freedom of speech, freedom of the press, and freedom of religion to Virginians. Okay, it says Virginia Declaration of Rights, so it gave rights, many different rights, to Virginians. Okay, it's in its name, so it makes it really easy to remember. And then it influenced the Bill of Rights, which is in the United States Constitution. The Virginia Statute of Religious Freedom stated that Virginians were free to worship as they please, and it influenced the First Amendment. Now, remember, in the name it says Virginia and religious freedom. Okay, it gives Virginians religious freedom. How this works is, the United States Constitution is a living document. Now, this does not mean that it can get up and walk around and dance and eat cookies. It means that it is a document that is able to change and adapt with the country. The country that we live in today is nothing like the country that was around when the Constitution was written by James Madison. And the Founding Fathers knew that things were going to change, and that the document needed to be able to change with the times. Okay, so the Constitution is a living document, meaning it's able to change and adapt with the country. The Bill of Rights is the first part of the United States Constitution, and it was influenced by the Virginia Declaration of Rights. The First Amendment is found in the Bill of Rights. It's the beginning of the Bill of Rights, okay? It's included in there, and it was influenced by the Virginia Statute of Religious Freedom. So if you look at it like it's a book, okay, picture a book in your head. You have a book, and the name of the book is the United States Constitution, okay? If you open it up to the first page where it lists all the chapters, chapter 1 is going to be called the Bill of Rights. And then if you go to the first page of chapter 1, there's the First Amendment, okay? So the First Amendment is inside the Bill of Rights, and the Bill of Rights is inside the Constitution. So just think of it that way. All right, so that's going to conclude us talking about documents for the day. Please make sure that you guys are filling in the notes along with this and completing all of your activities that you have for your B week. Have a great afternoon. Bye.